Hi, everyone. This is Justin Obrantz,
And this is Don Schaefer.
and you are listening to the Wise and the Wandering podcast. For those who know the way, and for those who are led astray. And if you feel like you fall into either of those categories, then you're in the right place. So let's dive in. So, Don, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, Justin, I think we have a fantastic topic here called Your Hardship Has a Purpose.
Your hardship has a purpose.
Yes. We sometimes fail to realize when we're in the middle of hardships that God has a plan for all this, and it's to show us who we are and what we are and make us a better person.
And what purpose do you think a hardship has?
Well, how would you say? If it's all in the mindset, as far as what a hardship really is, and it's how we look and perceive things. And a lot of times in life, the depth of a character, the depth of a person, the strength of an individual are all developed in times of hardship. They're like stepping stones for us if we can look at them in the right way. But for a lot of people, hardships completely destroy them. And that's where this podcast is going to be a good one, Justin.
I think it will be. And I think a lot of the times, just to get into hardship, I think a lot of the times when we go through these things, when we go through these trials in our life, these hard testing times, I think it really is about our perspective. I think our perceptions themselves might just be wrong. A lot of the times when we go through this stuff, the way that we view hardship and when we go through rough times in our life, I think we have to realize, that we're not doing this alone. We're not supposed to be doing this alone.
That's right.
We're supposed to be a unit in terms of who we are as believers. We're supposed to be kind of synchronized with our Creator. We're supposed to be fully aware that He's in it with us, that He's fighting our battles for us. He's in there. So a lot of the times in this world, we don't have that, just to begin with. We don't have that. Our perceptions are kind of completely wrong in some cases, the way the world is today.
Yeah.
We think that we need a lot of other outside factors, external factors. We think that we need a lot of outside influences. We think we need medications and certain things to get us through our days rather than just to rely on God alone.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Even as a church body, I know we've talked about this a couple times, but the role of the body of believers as a church body, we're supposed to be a unit as a body, meaning that He is the head and we are the body. We're the church, the body, right?
Yeah.
So we're supposed to be a unit, praying for each other, getting together in agreement, bearing one another's burdens and leading with love, right?
Right.
And I think, not to get too far into this, but a lot of the times this is not seen in the church world today.
No.
A lot of the times I think that leaves individuals stuck in hardship, wondering where God is, why He's not showing up.
Yeah.
So today I just want to talk on hardship and why it actually has a purpose, why everything that you're put through, everything that you go through, all those hard times, the rocky moments, those moments where you think that God can't be found or He's being, He's just silent or not present, that God is working through it and there's actually a better purpose. He actually has a purpose for it.
Yes, He does. And it's interesting. I just wanted to say something here, Justin. There's a difference between pain and suffering. Yeah. And a lot of times people get that confused a little bit. Pain always goes away. Suffering can linger forever unless we learn how to deal with it. And a lot of times in our hardships, there might be a pain of certain sorts. That'll go away. But it's how we perceive the hardship and the suffering that keeps us bound up. And a lot of times we can't get over all that. But I have a story here I'd like to share, Justin, if I could.
Yes,
please do. It's about the 4 philanthropists. And all of them had a lot of money. And France was in a war. And at the end of the war, many of the men were in prisons. And the philanthropists, they got together and he says, we should help these guys that are in the prisons. And one of them, he says, I noticed that these guys are sleeping on the dirt floors, and it's miserable for these guys. So what I want to do is I'm going to donate mattresses and pillows to help them in their suffering. So that's what he did. So he made it nice and comfortable inside this prison so that they could have a nice bed to sleep in and pillows and maybe even a blanket or so. And the second philanthropist said, I noticed that they don't have good drinking water. So what I'd like to do is get some good water brought in so they got good drinking water, they can bathe properly, and have that need taken care of with their suffering. But then the third one says, I noticed they don't have decent food. They're malnutrition. They're getting very weak. And what I like to do is I like to go to the local farmers and get some good meat, good vegetables, and bring it down so that these guys can eat well and be comfortable in their suffering. But then the fourth philanthropist, he says, well, you know what I want to do? He says, I am going to provide them the keys so that they can get out of the prison and be free from their suffering completely. And that's where a lot of times people are today. They go through hardships, but they try to make themselves comfortable in their suffering rather than grabbing onto the key that's going to set them free. Yeah. And that's where when you talk about the church, you talk about Jesus Christ, that is the source of setting us free. Because hardship, I know we've talked about this before, Justin. Hardship is like a ship that leads you someplace. And, a lot of times God allows a hardship, taking you through the hard times, because on the other side is where the blessing is. The other side is where the growth is, where the maturity is, where everything that God is wanting of you is on the other side. But you got to get on that ship.
You got to get on that ship.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they're so afraid of that sort of thing. But I think when Jesus came and gave us, he set us free of fear. We shouldn't be fearing life. We shouldn't be fearing some of these things. We should just be reaching out to him, because he's the one that's going to help us cross that sea of whatever the situation we are in and set us free and take care of the suffering and allow us, because we get trapped in a prison of our own mind, how we perceive things. We think it's the end of the world, and sometimes we get all locked up with emotions, bad emotions, and we can't function the way God is wanting us to function. That's what we're saying here, Justin, I think is an opportunity for people to really find some freedom, realizing that, not all bad is bad. Some bad is good. Just like they say, not all no is no. Some of it's yes, especially when you're talking to your wife or something. But it's just the opposite. So a lot of times, sometimes bad is not so bad. It's something we need to go through, especially as young people when we're raising children and stuff, and they go through issues and whatever. Some of this, if you're a parent looking at it properly, it could be good. Because your child needs to go through things to develop an understanding, develop a responsibility, develop an accountability, and all the elements that the child's going to need to go through life. And if you protect them from everything, the little bit of a hardship of any sort is going to destroy them. And they're going to get themselves into a suffering mode, and they will be stuck in that spot.
Yeah, that's so good. And you talked about a lot of things there, but I think from what I'm hearing is that you're really touching on the perspective of things. I like the analogy that you talked about, the ship, and that is something I'm going to touch on here, because that's so good. That's such a good analogy, because we're on that ship. And I think a lot of the times, like I was saying, our perception of hardship is just kind of skewed and wrong in a sense, because we feel like we have to do it alone. And I think that our perspective that when we have to do things alone is that we are stuck dealing with the pain and suffering alone. Yeah. So we have to change our perceptions. That's because right. I think that if we went through these moments, this suffering in our life, but we understand that God is working on it, that God is working through it on behalf of us, for us.
Yeah.
He's interceding for us, and that he's going to work it out for his good, then we will have a much better time going through anything in life. We will count it all, consider it all joy, like it says in the Bible.
Yes,
I think we would view hardship differently. For instance, I think the enemy, because when you're doing this alone, just like in a spiritual sense, Don, when the enemy can convince you that your hardship is just you fighting this alone and you're left to do it alone.
Yeah.
I think that is what happens is that you think that you did something wrong. Then you think that you did something wrong. And a lot of the times we live in fear and we live just constantly struggling with these things when we don't see God involved in it.
Right.
And
right.
when the enemy sees that, he uses that. He uses that to his advantage to make you feel shame and to make you feel guilty and to make you feel regretful, because the perception that you have is that you just did something wrong, right?
That's
because you're the one left dealing with it. So your perception is, I did something wrong. And the reality is you did nothing wrong.
No.
You did everything right. In some cases, you're just going through tough times.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And it is going through tough times. It's weathering the storm. Like they say, the common phrase is, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And that's
true.
It is true. But what it also does is when you have a relationship with Jesus and you go through these things, what I've come to realize in my life is it builds your faith. Mm-hmm. What happens is your capacity is being increased.
Yep.
Once you go through these things, your capacity, what you were able to do that maxed you out before it, max capacity, you broke that now. It's now increased. And when it's increased, your faith stretches. When you rely on God to get you through these things, your faith stretches. When it's challenged and tested, it stretches. And now it's stretched out. And you could say that it's not the same size that it was before. It's a different faith, right? That's the way your faith grows. And I think that when that happens, there's a resilience that's built up. And if you don't have God at the center of that, if he's not partnered in that, if you don't include God in that, your perception is always going to be that God is not working with you through that. You'll always think that you did it by yourself. And that's where the enemy kind of wants you. He wants you to not be partnered with God. He wants you to think that you always have to do it yourself. Because what happens is when everything comes your way, you look to yourself then and you rely on yourself to get you through it.
That's right.
But when you do that, though, you don't have a leverage. You don't have a leverage against the enemy. And in a spiritual battle, you don't have the leverage that you need, the power of the Holy Spirit. You don't have that, which is within you, right? You don't have that. That authority is within you. And that authority, once you change your perception on what hardship is and what suffering looks like, but when you change your perception and know that God always works everything together for good, for those who love God, for those who are called according to his purpose, you have that authority that's within you. You have that leverage to get past the point of hardship.
Yes,
and
you do.
First, we just have to partner with God in all that we do.
Amen. That is so true. You touched on a lot of stuff there. It's so true, because so many times what we do is we enter into a level of despair. And when we step away from things, and a lot of times too, when we get back to the suffering part of hardship, people get comfortable with their suffering. And it's woe is me. They're constantly, talking about their suffering, this and that, where it is a stepping stone. It's not something that's meant to last in your life. And that's where you touched upon what James said. That's a time where he talks about they counted it all joy, or they were jumping for joy when the trials, when the hardships or things would come upon them. Because in life, a lot of times it's about getting to the next step up. And sometimes you're only a hardship or two away from reaching those levels, because there is maturity, there is a strengthening process, there is a way of looking at things, seeing things, acting, all this stuff. It requires the process. And I believe, it talks about back in Jeremiah that God has a plan for each and every one of us, that he has a plan. And I think hardship is a part of that. We go through this. And so as a Christian, when you're relying on God, you realize that he's got your hand for every step. He's not going to let you trip on the step because you got a hold of his hand. He's going to help you get up that step, but he's going to let you go through whatever it is, the stumbling or whatever the failure might be or hardship in your life. He's going to let you go through that, but it's all for your good. And as a Christian, in a Christian perspective, you look at this and you say, well, if some things are happening to me, I realize I'm still part of the process. He's still working on me. He's developing me and allowing me to go through these situations. And on the other end, it's what we become, because we're living a life of becomers. We have to become. And hardships are something that help us to become the person that we were designed to be from the very beginning. But so many people get stuck with despair. They get stuck in the situations they're in, and they find a comfort spot. They find some place where it might be alcohol, it might be an addiction of some sort, just something to comfort them. I'm living in my misery, but just keep me comfortable. And like you talk about distractions and stuff, the world we live in right now, so many people just want to get totally oblivious. I look at, as far as like movies, TVs, reading books and stuff like that. Yeah. I look at that a lot of times as someone that may be going through a hardship and situation, but they're trying to get themselves placed in another world. That's not real. So they sit there and they put themselves in a different understanding. Maybe it's a good book of some sort or whatever it is. It gives them a period of time where they don't have to be who they are, where God wants us to be who we are. And he wants to develop us as individuals and give us the understanding that we don't need these distractions. We don't need to find a comfort zone where we can stay comfortable until he takes us someday. No, we have to walk through these things with an understanding and a trust in him that he is going to lead us and take care of us and do everything we need to have to be the person that we need to be.
Yeah, really. And we need to walk with him. We need to walk with him through these storms. When in the Bible, there's moments where the disciples are on the boat with Jesus and he's sleeping and the storms are going heavy and he gets up and he quells the storm. And they're just amazed by what he does because they're like, even he can control the weather. Like he must be, he must be the Son of God. And that belief that they had, we need to have that belief. If we truly believe that and we agree with that and we can come into a relationship with him.
Right.
And by relationship, I want to focus on that word ship, like we talked about before, because there is hardship and there is relationship.
That's true.
That word ship essentially means to be a part of. You've become a part of. So when you're going through hardship, it's like you're on a ship without a rudder or a compass. So you're getting tossed and turned in the waves and you're getting thrown all over the place.
Yes.
So when it comes to relationship, and I mean in relation,
that's good.
In relation to him, actually knowing him, actually walking with him.
Yep.
So what it takes to get from hardship to relationship.
Right.
Because you could say that we're going through hard times. We're navigating these waters on the ship, these high waves, but we don't have a rudder, we don't have a compass, we don't have a guide. And I think it's when you go through these moments, like you were saying, you start to brush things off once you go through these experiences, once you get through them, because now things that used to bother you don't bother you anymore once you get through it.
Yes.
So in order to get from hardship to relationship, sometimes it means coming to the end of ourselves. Sometimes it means that things have to get so hard that we need to put away pride. We need to put off pride and we need to put on humility.
Yeah.
And it is by doing that we can now get out of hardship and we can now rely on something that's greater than us and we can grow into relationship.
Yeah.
It is when our hardship is elevating us and is promoting us. Yeah. We can rely in that point. We get plugged into the source. I know you like to say that sometimes. And when we get plugged into the source, we are now in relation to him. We now have relationship. And by relating to him, we want to live out the same kind of life that he did. We want to provide a ministry like he did, the same way that he did. We want to treat others the same way that he did. And I think that is the ultimate goal of relationship. Yes, it is so important to believe God and to know that he's going to get you through your worries and your struggles, because he's going to. He'll never leave you nor forsake you. However, it is equally, if not more important, to let that develop a relationship that you have with him and to increase that relationship, because then your perception of hardship will continue to change, because you are no longer prideful about all of the situations that are going on in your life and how it's always you that has to get through everything and you give yourself all the credit, but you become humble. And I think it's when you become humble is when everything changes.
That's right.
Because that's when gratitude seeps in, and gratitude and humility come in pairs. And when you can put off that pride, because I mean, I think in 1 John, it talks about the lustful desires of the flesh and the pride of life, for these are the things that are of the world and not from the Father.
Yeah.
And when you put off the things from the world, you can put on the things from the Father, and you can walk with him.
Yeah, that is true. I like what you said about relationships there, Justin, because it got me thinking a little bit. When we talk about Jesus Christ and we talk about family, friends, and our church body, what we're talking about is a group of people that can relate to us, that they can understand the conditions, the situations that we're in. It's nice to be able to surround ourselves with people that can relate to the issues, the struggles, and everything that we're going through, and they help build us the faith and give us the hope that we can make through all that. Like you're saying, so many times people get isolated by themselves in a hardship or whatever. They have nobody to relate to them. They need a relationship to help carry them through the struggles and through the problems and stuff, but they have not that. And that's a lonely place. And it is a humbling, like you're saying about humbling. You have to humble yourself sometimes with people, being able to share the issues, the thoughts. What really touches me sometimes is when they talk about Jesus Christ being tempted in all ways as we are. And I believe that, God allowed himself to be placed inside of a man, Jesus Christ, that was just like us, that had the hardships, had everything, had to learn everything just like we have to learn. And he developed that. But he had, like you're saying, Justin, he had a relationship. He had a relationship with the Father. The Father knew all about the hardships. He knows how valuable they are. Actually, some of the hardships are probably just as valuable as gold, but people don't see it as that. Let's say it's a failure, it's a struggle, this and that. But a person that's really in tune, realizes that these are powerful moments. Actually, as a Christian's perspective, a hardship is a miracle waiting to happen. We've gotten ourselves into a position where we can allow God to create a miracle in our life, because we can't depend upon ourselves anymore. Some of these hardships, we can't depend upon ourselves. We're at what they call wit's end. I'm not sure where wit's end is, but they use it in the Bible. But we come to a place called wit's end where we can't figure this out anymore. That's where good relationships can be very, very helpful. People who have been through similar situations. A church body is meant to be that, but Jesus Christ is the head, and he's the one that's meant to direct us and take us by the hand through all these situations.
Yeah, that's so good. That's 100% true. And I think that what you said there, because it's not only just about trust, and it's not only about going through these hard things, but what happens is the faith that grows through this process. The hardship means that he has great plans for you and is going to use you in a mighty way. Yeah. If you will focus on him, right? If you will walk with him through it, he has great plans for you on the other side. And I think that because faith is, synonymous with trust, when you go through these things and you partner with God through them, your trust also grows, because when you take on every situation that happens to you in your life alone and you do it without God, you're going to crumble at some point, right? Because you can't do it alone. And I think that's what happens is we keep going through these sufferings because it's a vicious cycle. We just keep going through it alone and we crumble.
Yeah.
But we were never meant to do it alone.
No.
I know the world kind of teaches things this way, but it's actually a deception. If you just read the Bible, you see that we were never meant to do this alone. No. We have a creator who, if you look in the Bible, the theme is his steadfast love and the fact that we have nothing to fear and the fact that he'll never leave us, that he's always with us, that he wants the best for us.
Right.
And I think that what it comes down to is a lot of the times the way that we perceive things is not far off from what they actually are, but there's just something missing. There's just something that we're missing. There's some truth that we're not fully given that could change everything, right? It's like something that's kept from us. It's kept from us to help us grow.
Right.
It's kept from us to develop us, just like in the book of Job, when Satan is going after Job and he's just inflicting all of these damages and injuries and, all this pain and stuff on him. But he has to go through God first. God essentially is giving Satan permission to go after Job because he knows Job is not going to lose his faith, that he's going to be developed, that he's not going to blame what's happening. He's not, the blame game, he's not going to blame what's happening to him on God. He's going to understand that God is in it with him, that these attacks don't come from God, and also that he's not doing it alone. Because Don, if Job just thought he was doing it alone, of course he would blame it on God. He would probably blame it on himself, but he would also blame God if he was far away from him, but he wasn't. So a lot of the times, it's just like that with us. We're going through these things, and God is maybe allowing them to develop us. There's just a little bit of truth that we're not given, but it is so that we can be developed. And I think that the hardship means that there's greater things on the other side, just like when after the storm comes the calm, right?
Yep.
And yes, he's going to use us in a mighty way, but we just have to keep trusting in him, and we have to keep the faith. We have to walk by faith and not by sight, knowing that usually when these attacks come, it's because there's something greater that's coming at the end.
Yeah, that is so true. And I know a little bit of something that can help in these situations as far as hardships are concerned is the Bible says that we need to be thankful for all things, to be grateful for the life, for the opportunity that we have in life. Yes. Are we going to go through hardships? Yes, we are. Are we going to experience pain? Yes, we are. But God is wanting to take us through all that. He's got better things on the other side. I know my mother-in-law, who has passed, a lovely woman named Tilly, but she was in a wheelchair, and she was suffering in a lot of ways and stuff. But I used to sit there and I used to tell her, Tilly, God's got a brand new body for you. On the other side, God's got it all. And there's things we have to go through in life. But if we can go through it with the right attitude, with the right heart, being thankful for the opportunity he's given us in life, it takes the pain away. It takes the suffering away. It becomes something that because suffering is a mental thing. And I know in life, one could imagine if we were living in a 100-room mansion, and, we have all kinds of stuff in this mansion, but we're locked up in one room. We're locked up in one room. We've came across a hardship and whatever. We're afraid to leave that room. Right. And if we can get the key of understanding or the principle of thought that says, hey, there's a whole lot more to this mansion than this one room. There's a whole lot more to life than this one hardship that I'm going through right now. Give me the keys to open the door and set me free of these things, because I want to experience everything inside this mansion. God has got a lot of beautiful things for us, but like you were saying, Justin, we have to get to the other side. And a lot of times it's a hardship that is the ship that's taking us to the other side. And a person, as they grow in maturity, they realize that. They realize that they're not finished until they're finished. We're living life until the very end, and there will be hardships. There's no guarantees, but if we're going to sit there and lock ourselves up in a prison worrying about life, worrying about what might happen tomorrow, worrying about this and that, or experiencing it, we are putting ourselves in our own mental prison, and we will be suffering probably for the rest of our time here on earth, and God does not want that. He wants us free.
Yeah, he does. And I just want to wrap this up by saying to anybody who's listening to this podcast, I just want to change your perception of the way you think about hardship. So do not associate hardship with punishment or fear of punishment, but instead associate hardship with promotion, because you are getting promoted in the spiritual world when you go through these things. In the heavenlies, the angels in the heavenly realm, they are noticing you when you go through these things.
That's
when
right.
you stand in faith, that they are seeing that your faith is increasing when you look at it this way. When you perceive things the right way, the way God has intended you to perceive things, then his path for you will become much clearer in the things ahead.
That's right.
You will no longer look at hardship as something that crumbles you, but something that is temporary and something that builds you for a greater purpose.
That's right. And I believe, Justin, that we've given here an opportunity of giving keys to many, many people. And that the challenge is to use those keys to unlock the prisons and to realize that you have a freedom and a beautiful life laying in front of you.
Amen.